Hey everyone. So today we're gonna talk about Spring Cloud functions, that why it is getting used, and now it has recently started getting popular also, and people are developing apps also with using Spring Cloud function. So Spring came up with a project where they want to create basically a framework which can be used to develop REST APIs, develop basically serverless application, or develop application for your local machines, or a PaaS container for example Azure App Service also, right? So basically they want that there should be a common code base, and without any much code changes we can deploy our projects or whatever the code or the functions which we are writing to any of the containers basically. So we will not be dependent on, will not be writing specifically, for example, for AWS lambdas or Azure functions. Basically we could have a common code, and that we can use it, and that code we can use it to deploy it anywhere basically. So that was the main idea behind Spring Cloud Functions. So today in this sessions, basically we will talk about how we can create a REST APIs using Spring Cloud Functions, and we'll see example how we can create a GET API. Okay. Now, in Spring Cloud Function, if you talk about Spring Cloud Functions, it is built on top of the three core functional interfaces of Java: Supplier, Consumer, and Functions. Okay, so if you understand, Supplier is nothing functional interface. Basically, it accepts the data or any except whatever the generic type, or whatever kind of data you passes to that particular interface, right? Whichever classes which is implementing to that particular interface. So if you are implementing the Supplier interface, it will basically translate into a get API basically. And similarly, if you are using basically, if you're implementing consumer or the functional interface, they will translate into the post APIs. Okay. Now, and if you talk about delete and put and patch APIs, the Spring Cloud Function has not given a guideline formally for that. I think that it gonna be released into next version, I guess 3.1.3, whenever it comes in 2021. Okay. So to start with, let's create a project for Spring Cloud Functions. Okay, let's say for example I have chosen the configuration Gradle Java, and I'm using Spring Boot 2.4.5 version, and I gave the artifact names and group ID and artifact ID, and I'm going to package it in a jar. Okay, so one of the main dependencies which you have to add for Spring Cloud Function is basically is if you type functions, basically it will give you option to add the Spring Cloud Function dependency. Plus, let's say for example I want to run this container currently in my local machine, right? So I will add basically the web dependency also. Okay. Now the thing is, Spring Cloud Function supports very well both the traditional Spring also and the reactive Spring also. So if you are familiar or comfortable with traditional Spring, you can go ahead and import the Webflux dependency instead of Spring Web. Okay. Now you can generate the project. Just to save the time, I have already generated the project, and I have imported the project in my STS. Okay. And so once you import the project, by default it will generate a normal Spring Boot starter class, how we have in traditional Spring Boot. Nothing changed there. Okay. And if you see the build.gradle, right, in build.gradle we have the dependency which we have added for Spring Cloud Functions and the Spring Boot starter web. Okay. Now the thing is, let's try to create a get API. Okay, and let's run the get API locally. Okay, so if you seen earlier when we were talking about the Spring Cloud Function is built on top of three core function interfaces, right? Supplier and consumer and the functions, right? So, and we talked about that if we implement the supplier, that gonna be nothing but it will be a get method. Actually, we're taking something from the server. Okay. So what we have done is we have created, let's say, a hello API. It will nothing but translate into a get API with the URI as a hello. Okay, and I have implemented the supplier functional interface, and in supplier functional interface has the method get, and in that get I am returning basically a string. Okay, so if I go ahead and run this project, it will not basically create that hello URI or hello endpoint, basically REST endpoint. What we have to do is basically in the project we have to also provide a tag in the properties saying that Spring Cloud function scan packages where your functions are present. Okay, and let's say if you have multiple packages where your function is present, you can give a comma separated also. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll basically run this project. Okay, if we say that okay, now let's run this project, what it will do is it will start the server. Okay, and if you say that if you start the server, now my server is up and running in my local. Now I should have a endpoint hello, which will be return get endpoint hello, and which will be returning uh, which will be returning hello Spring Cloud function as a string in the response. Okay, and you can see that the server is basically started on 8080 port now. So my endpoint should look like something like this: localhost 8080 followed by get endpoint hello. And you can see that it is nothing but a REST endpoint which is called by the browser, and it is returning this string. Okay, so it is as simple as that. And similarly, let's say for example, now if you want to deploy this code into, let's say, Azure, or let's say in AWS Lambdas, right? You just have to add the dependencies for AWS Lambda or the Spring Cloud functions, and you don't have to change a single thing in the code actually, and your functions will be ready. So thank you. I think in the next session, actually, we'll talk about, uh, we'll build on top of the same code. We'll take this code and we'll deploy this in on top of on AWS Lambdas, and then we'll link the API gateway also to make it a proper REST service. Okay. Thank you.